currently steaming as you can see, probably to the right ugly back. There's a harbour here. Now it's the first important event that occurred at this harbour goes back to 1066. So William is in preparation for the invasion of England at this point, and he's gifted by his wife Matilda, the then Duchess of Normandy, later to be Queen of England as well, a vessel. Now that vessel was built here in Barfleur by the shipwrights of Barfleur, who were the best in the business at the time. That ship was called the Mora, and the Mora would take William across the channel and land on the coast at Pevensey, and that was built here in this harbour. Now the modern day harbour obviously has modern concrete walls, etc., but you can see from standing here at low tide the natural features of the natural harbour, and that was why this was a more strategic and more important place back in the 11th century than it is today. Now the other reason why we're here is another famous ship, and that was called the White Ship. Now the White Ship was one of the fastest in the fleet available to King Henry I. So it's the year 1120. Henry I has been in Normandy, and he's landed within Normandy territory, securing up support and to pronounce that his only legitimate son, William Athlin, who happens to also be the son, like Henry's wife, was the daughter of Harold Godwinson. So it's a real linking here of the Anglo and the Norman aspects in English history. It's the son of, or the grandson of, the Duke of William and the grandson of Harold. So it's a real important dynastical match that's occurring. It's going to attempt to reunite the country, and he has just been named heir to not only the Duchy of not only to the Kingdom of England, but also to the Duchy of Normandy. In fact, he is now on this trip. He has been given the title of the Duke of Normandy. We must think in the 11th, 12th century that the title of Duke of Normandy is similar in a vein maybe as to what today would be called the Prince of Wales. And he also bears the second name of Atheling. So Atheling is a old Anglo-Saxon word or Old English word that also means heir. And also what has happened on this trip is also arranged a marriage between William and the daughter of the Count of Anjou, which will strengthen the Normandy southern border and further grant land to William. So November the 20th, 1120, the royal party is about to return to England. Henry has his ship, William has his. Now William's ship, the White Ship, the captain is very boastful about it being the fastest ship in the port and in the kingdom. And so when Henry sets off with plenty of time to get to England, he leaves William and the White Ship behind, and on board the White Ship at the time is a few other significant people. So as well as William, there's his half sister Matilda. He's also got a sister, an actual sister, also named Matilda. So don't get the two confused, and certainly don't get them confused with their nan as well, who was the provider of William's ship here. The Matildas in Normandy do get very confusing, I must admit. So when Henry's ship leaves, William's, the White Ship, is still at harbour here. Now certainly it's not along the harbour wall that we see today, but probably sort of more of like a wooden jetty or something like that. It's more against. And there's lots of different accounts as to what happens next, but one of the prevailing ones is that some local priests come to bless the voyage, and all the young royal party have all had a bit too much wine, and they give them a bit of abuse and send them away. And a lot of things are happening, and it starts to unnerve some of the people on the boat, one of which is Stephen of Blois, the king's nephew, William's cousin, and he makes his like I say, excuses, but he makes his apologies and leaves the ship, fearing that something's going to happen. Eventually, later that night, the ship does leave, and it's going to sail out of the harbour here at Barfleur and along the coast, and then attempt to cross to England. And in fact, they've had a bet with the king that they will make it there before he does. That's how confident they are in the speed of the ship. Now, there's a second part to this story. I'm going to go round the headland to tell it to you, because what we need to look at is over that side. So I'll be back shortly. In the meantime, I'm going to cut through the grounds of the church, because there is some memorials in there, and then I will see you soon. Okay, so the rock in front of me, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but it has got a tablet on there commemorating the building of Mora here. So there is a commemoration here of that. So we're talking about the white ship, different ships setting off. So obviously the Normandy by water isn't there. The rock formation is, and as you can see, it is quite a rocky coastline here. So as we come around here, so it sailed out of the mouth of the entrance, and then obviously through those rocks there, and it would then head again. They tend to hug the coast more back in those days, as compared to now. So they wouldn't have set straight out across there. They would have hugged up the coastline a bit, which I'm hoping I can see a bit more from around here, although it doesn't look like it. So give me a sec and I will come back to you once I'm in a better position for the rest of the story. Okay, so the ship's clear the rocky headland on the exit to the harbour just here, very aptly for the story I'm about to tell. Just been past the lifeboat station here at Barfleur, and then it sets out. So it was a clear doze. It sets out. It passes that small island. Now on the far side of the Bay of Barfleur here, you can just see, I hope you can see it on the screen. I know it is a bit small, but out there is a lighthouse, and it's one of the tallest lighthouses actually in Europe, and it's guarding a very flat section of rocks that are kicking out into the sea there below it. And what happens is that the ship has come out of the harbour. It's got out into sort of what it would consider the open sea, because as you can see, once clear of the rockland, it is pretty much open sea. So although it's tracking the coastline, it is actually at sea rather than sort of in a bay per se. And what happens at this point is that the captain decides to put all the sails up and to make the speed that he had promised the young prince. Now, what happens next, I think, is sort of very easy to see coming now. With a sickening thud, the ship crashes into the into the rock, and when the impact is made, it punches a fatal hole in the hull of the white ship, and she begins to sink. Now as the sinking starts to unfold, some of William's retinue, they say his bodyguards, for it as a better word, come to from their drunken stupor and realise what is happening and the significance of it, and put the young prince into a form of lifeboat. It will probably just be a small little boat, my guess, and they row him away, and they're actually heading reasonably to safety, because as you can see from that rockland, if you can get in, especially if you're going in potentially on on a slower speed vessel, shall we say, it's probably quite easy to land. Also, what I would add is that right now I have come here specifically at low tide to see these rock formations, where I would imagine that they probably would have sailed out on the high tide. So that's why the rockland was invisible, and they were unfortunate enough to strike it. So at this point, anyway, as I was saying, sorry about the bells. The young prince is under the protection of his bodyguards and is being rowed safely away from the ship back towards the harbour. Now comes the fatal moment in the whole story, and that is that within the noise of the ship sinking, he starts to hear his sister Matilda screaming. She has been thrown from the ship, and in the weight of a royal dress, because although she was the illegitimate child, she was still in essence a form of princess and a form of high nobility in the country, so she would have been dressed in quite finely, and the weight of that was pulling her under. William, hearing the screams of his half sister, orders the men in the boat to turn around to go back to rescue. Now at first they were reluctant, but eventually he argues the point, I am the prince, you do as I say, and they go back in to try and find her. That's the last anyone sees of any of them. The ship is dashed to pieces on the rocks, and both William and Matilda are sucked under along with William's retinue. The only person to survive the sinking would be one of the chefs on board, who was found sitting on a rock the following day. Now, news took time to reach England. This was supposedly the fastest ship in the fleet, all the boasting. When Henry arrives in England, he's expected to see it. It's not there, so he makes his way back to London. News travels across the sea, and about 3 days later, news reaches England of the sinking and the death of Henry's sole heir, William, and his daughter Matilda. And for several days, William does not even come. Henry does not even come out of his room. They have to almost draw lots of souls from that Henry's entourage is going to tell him the news. So eventually he finds out the news, and like I say, he doesn't come out of his room for 3 days. He's utterly heartbroken, and according to sources, he never smiles again. Now, as royal life needs to continue, Henry's next step is to promote an heir. So how he does this is that he recalls his other legitimate child, the other Matilda, who is currently Empress in Germany, back to England. And throughout the course of the rest of his life, Henry promotes Matilda as heir of England. Now, when Henry and all the barons at one point or another agree to this and pay acts of fealty to Matilda. However, when Henry dies, behind the scenes another candidate has gradually been put in place, and that candidate is none other than Stephen of Blois, who was the messenger who removed himself from the ship prior to it leaving Barfleur harbour. So some rebel barons have promoted him as their call. So when Henry dies, Stephen acts with pace and seizes the throne. This unleashes a 20-year period of civil war in England, which has gone down to what we call the anarchy. It involves a lot of castle building, a lot of power grabbing by dukes and barons, and eventually it comes out in Matilda's favour when her son Henry Plantagenet is recognised as heir. There's a lot more information. I've gone through that very quickly. If you watch my video I put out on in November last year on the White Ship disaster. There's a lot more info, but that is why this quaint little CP fishing village on the northeast tip of the Cotentin Peninsula is so important, and why I paid it a visit today. It's got a little, like I say, it's got a little plaque about the Mora. There's a little sort of notice plaque about the White Ship. Not much else, but a very fascinating place to come, because in the end this spot here, or those rocks out there, was where the direct Norman dynasty rule ended. Okay, so it finished there. Yes, you can argue that it's offshoots, but from direct descent passing on, this is where it ended. So I hope it's been informative. Any questions, any comments, drop them in the comments, and I hope you have a good day.